It was July 4th, it was 2008. I remember it very clearly because I'm sitting in a chair watching my friends play football and eat hot dogs and drink beer. And I'm sitting in a chair worrying about maybe closing my business down, about maybe laying everybody off. I had family in the business, I had friends in the business. What would that mean? The financial crisis had hit, and I, in my infinite wisdom, thought it would be a great idea to go after mortgage companies. We had a huge business from mortgage companies, and they suddenly all went out of business. 40% of my revenue gone. 40% of my receivables uncollectible. And I realized I was going to have a lot of very tough conversations. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I had to navigate all of those conversations with all of these different people that I had been avoiding for years. Years and years of, well, that person will figure it out eventually, right? They'll get better. That vendor will not get mad that I haven't paid them in 3 months as we try to get our cash flow back, right? So those conversations were so pivotal. I had to go back and figure out the culture. I had to go back and figure out how we were going to work together and save money and ultimately save the business. But it was the conversations part that saved me. And I don't know, I always joke that I'm a card-carrying extrovert. I'm also a card-carrying avoider. I don't know if anybody feels that, right? So what we want to talk about today is, I want to make sure we're seeing the, oh, there we go. We've got the slides, cool. Is how do you master tough conversations? Now, it's my job here today to do one of two things. I either need to change how you think, or I need to change how you feel. That's up to you. I'm going to give you a little bit of both, and you decide if you think you need to change how you think about tough conversations, or maybe you need to change how you feel about it. Because I kind of find it's one or the other, right? Either you need some strategies, you need some tactics, you need some help on how you might approach it, or maybe you just feel overwhelmed and maybe you just feel scared or anxious or want to avoid the whole thing, right? It's so important that we try to figure that out the right way. Now, show of hands, how many of you have an employee you've been avoiding a conversation with? Yeah. How many of them are your friends or family? Most. Afraid that maybe if we have that conversation and it doesn't work out with that person, they're not going to be our friend anymore. They're going to be mad at us. Our family is going to be mad at us. Our spouse is going to be mad at us, right? So many of you, when you found out this is what the topic was when we had the cocktail party yesterday, immediately as, well, I have this person, and you knew them before you hired them, right? And that was a part of the struggle. But a lot of times what happens is that the people who got us here are not the people that are going to get us there, right? But damn, is that conversation hard, right? To have that, hey, I think you need to get off the bus conversation, or maybe we're not in the same place, man, is that tough. And we hope that maybe they'll just get hired somewhere else. They'll go away. Which, by the way, is a great strategy. If you're an avoider, call a recruiter and ask them to recruit that employee out of your company. I'm not saying I've done it, but I'm not denying it either. Because sometimes they're high performers, but boy, are they a pain in the ass, right? So, real quick, pop quiz. There's this gentleman in red and there's a gentleman in yellow. So the man in yellow is the one talking, right? I know this is an oversimplified example, and the man in red is listening. Who decides the meaning of what is being said? I heard a lot of, so let's say, show of hands. Do you think it's the person in yellow? Do you think it's the person in red? You are smart. Most audiences get this totally wrong, and they say it's the person in yellow. The one talking is the one who decides meaning. So well done to have a very high level of EQ here, because most people don't understand that it's your job to get the meaning right. When somebody says something to you, it's your job to make sure you heard it right, because our biases and our complications and all of our experiences and everything change what we think they're saying. That was a huge lesson for me because I always thought it was up to them. They need to get themselves straight. They need to come in calm. They need to prepare. They need to tell me what they really think. And then over time I realized they're totally incapable of doing that, especially when they're upset and they're emotional and there's something going on in the room. So before we kind of get into some of the strategies, I do want to set the tone for what is the baseline, what's the minimum thing that we need to think about and be doing if we want to start to have better conversations at work. And I probably in most of my talks, this is Daniel Pink's great work. If you don't know him, if you haven't read any of his books, they're fantastic. But you have to have autonomy and mastery and purpose in your business. And if you don't have these three things, my presentation will mean nothing to you. In fact, I would argue this entire day may mean nothing to you if you don't have these basic things in your business. Meaning, people have to have some level of autonomy to get their jobs done. If you're micromanaging them, if you're squishing them into this tiny little box and they have to get your permission to do every little thing, you'll never be free, right? And it's tough and it's scary to give people autonomy. And they're going to screw up and they're going to make mistakes. But hopefully they're going to grow and they're going to get better and they're going to feel more a part of your business and more connected to it because you have given them the permission to go get it done the way they think they should get it done, right? Now, autonomy does not mean you get to go do whatever you want. It doesn't mean you hire them as the VP of sales and tomorrow they decide they're in customer service. That's not what autonomy means, right? But it's, hey, this is your job. This is what I expect. We agree to this. Go do it. You need my help? I'm here. But like, you're a brilliant person. You should be able to figure it out. And I remember that was scary because when I built my business, it was just me when I started. And then I added a few people, and then a few people more, and a few people more. And at some point when I sold it a few years ago, we had 4,500. And when I was at that moment, back on July 4th in 2008, everything came through my desk. Everything went through my brain. I didn't mean to set it up that way. But because we started so small, it was so easy when it was just a few people. They would come into my office and say, hey, I was going to do this thing. What do you think? Oh, yeah, that sounds cool. Maybe we should tweak this and change that. But over time, it just got to be everything went to my sergeants or corporals or however you want to, my people right below me. And then they would end up bringing it to me, and nothing happened unless I, did this. What was amazing is when I went on vacation and I turned off my phone, back in the day you could go to Europe and there was no Wi-Fi and no one could call you, right? You had to go to a payphone to check in. The business did amazing. When I was gone, the business did fantastic because they didn't have to get my permission to get all this stuff done. They started going faster. In fact, they would say, Chris, when's the next vacation? So I had to change that. I had to undo that. I had to give them that permission to say, go and do those great, amazing things, and when you hit a wall or something's really a problem, and then I can help you and I can bring in what I'm good at, then that's a great time to do it, but not all the time. Mastery is the idea that we're learning something new. You're all here to hopefully learn something new. We want our employees to be learning new things all the time. And if you can't do that at work, then can they do that at home or somewhere else, learn how to play guitar, like something. They have to have something in their lives to be happy, right? We all need to be learning something new all the time. And then purpose. Do they understand the purpose of your company? The purpose is not to make a profit. That is a necessary, very important outcome. But that's not the purpose, right, of why we're here. We have to have that figured out and communicate it. Now, I do a lot of work around culture. And so ultimately, when we have these conversations and we're doing these things, this is what we are focusing on. These are the 7 pillars of what makes an amazing culture. I've done hundreds of thousands of surveys, worked with some of the top companies around the world, and we have tested this and poked at it a million times, and this is what the best companies in the world do. They are transparent. They have positive leadership, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. They measure what matters. They focus on what makes us unique, not what makes us the same, and they talk to their clients and their employees about their uniqueness, right? That's part of the marketing component. It's also the part about inclusion and equity to make sure that we understand what makes everybody different, not what makes us the same. We have a great recognition program. We know how to listen, and we know how to deal with mistakes in a positive way, right, as innovation. All right. But when we are dealing with a tough conversation, I would argue we're normally dealing with a difficult person. And not to get too philosophical on you, but every problem you have is an interpersonal problem. Every problem you have is with another person. If you had been magically appeared on this earth and it was only you and no people ever existed, ever, and it was just you walking around all by yourself, you wouldn't have any problems. Didn't take a shower for 3 days? Who cares? It's just you, right? Need food? It's right over there, right? There's no problem that is not an interpersonal problem. It's all about other people, and so we have to get better at dealing with them and helping them and helping ourselves. So when we talk about difficult people, there are some different personality types that I always like to throw out there and see if any of these are the ones that you've been dealing with. We have the bully. So you know some of them. Some of them might have been in your family. Might have divorced one of them, you know. You have the narcissist. This is this working? Oh, there we go. The manipulator, the slacker, the blamer, the control freak, the victim, the passive aggressive. I don't know if we have another clicker, but this, or if I'm not pointing it to the right way there, but maybe I need to point it over there. The baby and the know-it-all. Yeah, this is... Did I forget psychopath? Maybe I'm blocking it. And we have the overbearing as well. So, ultimately, before we start worrying about other people, I always say we need to think about what's the story that we're telling ourselves. I'm not good at tough conversations, right? I don't want this person to be mad at me. Because we can only do our 50%. You can only do your half of the relationship. And if you've been trying to do 75% for that relationship, it's always set up to fail. So we can do our part, we can do our 50%, but we better do it really well, right? And make sure that the story we're telling ourselves is not screwing us up. Does that resonate with anybody? Is anyone thinking, ooh, yeah, I've been telling myself this thing and that's not helping this, right? And then they have to do their part. And we can retool and we can retrain or we can replace if they're not willing to show up and do their part, right? So as we walk through this, what's important is that we begin to identify the personality type. This is the first sort of thing. So we think about what we can do. We can make sure our story is good. We can make sure we're showing up the best we can, that we're doing our 50%. But now, let's think about them. Let's think about that person you've been avoiding that conversation with. And this applies to every part of your life. It might be your business. It might be your parent. It might be one of your kids. It might be your neighbor. Might be that really mean postal person you keep having to talk to when you drop off packages and they're not nice to you. Whoever it is in your life, all of these things will help. So the first thing is to identify the personality type. If you haven't tried to label that person, you're not going to be able to strategize how to deal with them. So were they the bully? Were they the overbearing? Are they the slacker? Right? Think about who you think they are in this moment so that you can come up with better strategies on how to deal with them. And then you need to go and confirm with other people. Because you might be wrong. Right? Our emotions and what we think may not be correct. So make sure that if you think they're a bully, everybody else who you can connect with, they think they're a bully too. Okay, they're a bully, let's go figure out how to deal with bullies. Right? And there's this amazing thing now, it's called the internet. And you can go and Google how to deal with a bully, and there's usually 10 really good strategies, right? How to deal with someone who's a slacker. There's 10 really good strategies, right? I don't have a book I'm selling. I'm not telling you to go buy something or a workbook. It's free. You could probably pull up ChatGPT right now and be like, hey, give me 10 ways to deal with a bully. And be like, yes, Chris, here you go, right? We have all the resources, but we need to identify who that person is so we can then go forward. Okay? And this next one might be hard, but we need to see the world their way Who are they? Why do they act this way? What do we know about them that might help us understand them better? Can you hear the words that they hear and the sounds that they hear on their ears through your own perceptions, through your way as well? Can you really imagine what it's like to be them every day? Maybe they're the brand new Gen Zer and they are on their phone all day and they seem like they're not connected to your business and you're struggling because there's a multi-generational communication gap. But what's it like to be them, right? I'll tell you, most young people, when it really gets down to it and they're having a hard time and they're struggling, it's because they're lonely. They don't really have close friends. They don't have a room of people like this they can come and talk to and rely on. They're just stuck on their phones. Right? So what is it about them? How do we see it their way? What do they want? Do you understand what they want out of this business, this relationship? Have you identified what you think they want? When I sat down and I had a couple people in my business that I was like, this is not working, I struggled. It took me like 2 days to what do they want? And it wasn't, they wanted a paycheck. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to be seen. They wanted to look important. They wanted to not be called on in a meeting, right? It was all sorts of different things that what do they really want out of this? And what can we change? Then we want to simplify everything, right? So what is the issue that we're having with them? And if we're going to go have a conversation, can we simplify the location, right? Going to go have a tough conversation with someone in the middle of a Starbucks with everybody talking and the music blaring. Do you think you're going to have a great outcome? No, they'll be embarrassed because there's other people around. They won't feel comfortable talking to you if other people can hear, right? We want to make sure that we are being good stewards as the leaders of our organizations for these people, or just to be more effective if it's somebody in our personal lives, to make everything simple. Which means that one time, 3 years ago, you were rude to me, and blah, 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 but really what the problem is that we're not communicating, right? Get rid of all of the junk that doesn't matter, and let's just focus on what's the issue, where are we going to meet, and what are we going to do going forward. My favorite one that everyone always forgets is agenda, agenda, agenda. Have you clearly communicated to yourself what you want to address? And have you told them? Have you told them what you want to talk about in advance? Because ultimately we want to avoid that tough conversation and they show up and we got a list, but you haven't given them time to process and to think and to show up with whatever thoughts they have, and they feel like bamboozled. They feel like you are coming at them and they're not prepared. Right? Hey, tomorrow I really need to have a tough conversation. We need to have a conversation. Here's what I want to talk about. How can we be better together? Right? Is this the right job for you? What is your future? Whatever these things are, and that's tough to do in advance. They might throw them off, but they have a little bit of time. Now, don't tell them on Monday that and you want to have a conversation on Friday. That's a lot of perseveration that's going to happen, right? But maybe giving them 24 hours or 12 hours, a little bit of time to think about those topics so they can show up and be good.